Welcome to Wicked Shizuku's Reviews, bringing you a southern perspective on books, movies, music, and much, much more. Stick around for a while, you just might hear something wicked. Well, hello, and welcome back to Wicked Shizuku's Reviews. If you're new, please rewind and go back to the beginning of this playlist, as this is episode 49, and Thursday read. So, a short note is that if you find me too slow, please turn the speed up on your settings, and it might make me a little bit more palatable or a little bit more understandable. And with that note, I will be continuing on with tonight's read for Nomad Love. And I am picking up again at chapter 11. That night, her eyes against those in the mirror, Lismine tells her story with unheard of slowness. Yes, that night. Imagine a voice advancing slowly along a silk thread. That night, it was like there was an extra color in the sky, a color gnawing away his insides, bit by bit. There was no way for him to close his eyes so long as that color was there. Noise times 1,000. A single color become a full orchestra inside him, making a home in his glistening membranes, slippery. Sorry, we've got a visitor. All right, Miss Frosty. Okay, sorry about that. We got transferred over to our chat screen instead. So, let's go back to our reading screen. All right. Okay, where was I? Ow, ow, ow. Hi, Miss Frosty. She's wanting to have a little attention here. Hi. Hello. Say hi. Say hi. Do you want to read too? Yes? No? Okay. Stay down. Okay. Good girl. No? Alright, back to it. A single color become a full orchestra inside him, making a home in his glistening membranes, slippery, gummy, and playing noise. Not a music he didn't like, or a matter of a few missed notes here and there. Rather, a noise that never let up, waking him up. That night it was precisely one of those colors he'd seen, invisible, or perhaps merely transparent, so noisy when he opens his eyes to it, when he can no longer sleep, or even reclose his eyes. Yes, he was sitting there, at the foot of my bed, watching me. I felt the weight of his eyes on me, and it woke me. But I went on pretending. I stayed there, under the sheet, not moving a muscle. At first I heard him, and eventually saw him through the wound of my closed eyelids. There he was, the body of a young man, with a white beard halfway down his chest, something to make one tremble beneath the sheets. Even so, I never moved a muscle. I'd never seen Muley this way. He was stark naked, holding his head between his hands, as if making a sign for the orchestra to stop, as if he wanted to keep all that racket inside so as not to wake me. He was stark naked, even though night was dressing him here and there. All the time, it was strange to have an entire body there watching me, and me still pretending to be asleep. Then I heard him speak in a voice I hardly knew. I didn't exactly hear him speak so much as a whisper. Even lower than that, I watched you go, your beauty reduced to a grimace. There was nothing I could do to save you or keep you. Not even for a little, not even for an instant. I sang you that tune you liked to sing me on feast days, remember? I sang it to you thinking death might ease up a little if you could dance it a last time under your eyelids. I cried like a child for you, like a little girl, as if I was crying through your eyes. You know, and still today, I wanted to make the journey with you. I lay down beside you, shut my eyes, didn't move anymore, and didn't die. Labtul, he said, though I am listening. He said, Labtul, I remember that. Then he very gently got down from the bed and went back to his room. Since then, there have been nights when I found him again, completely naked, right here at my feet. It's probably all down to that color keeping him from sleep. Like some illness gnawing out his insides. There shouldn't be any color, or any night, for that matter. I went on pretending to sleep, during which time he went on calling me Labtul, Labtul, Labtul. Like that, far off, not taking me in his arms, never touching me, not so much as brushing me with a little finger. It's true, I'm not trying to find excuses for him. But during all those nights, he never once lifted my sheet. Chapter 12. Moulet waited on the floor below in a room whose window looked out on the others. White bed, white rug, white drapes, delicately woven from white threads. All this whiteness brought to Marrakech by men mounted on great camels, then donkey-back down narrow streets along blind walls that seemed to lead nowhere, then into tiny side street, then into a tiny side street, until at last, old, lovely, ancient, a door with an immense brass knocker telling you this was the place. Then across a long corridor bordered with stone columns and up a big stairway, a few more steps across aisles, door by door, gently, gently to Moulet's room. He wanted a color able to somehow merge into the walls, slip discreetly over the rugs, penetrate their weft, and then the even more delicate, vulnerable weft of sleep. Desperately seeking to close his eyes, he recognized that color was a thread like the others, and so he wanted something light, scarcely visible, a color folded back on itself, thinned down to infinity, on the verge of vanishing. You might almost say transparent, but transparent might not quite be enough. Better yet, absent. Something like a colorless color. You'd be able to open your eyes on it and think they were shut. There's a name for that, a name for a dazzling whiteness. He wanted a color that wouldn't hurt, and most importantly, one that wouldn't make noise, mute, voiceless, slipping over the world without causing any disturbance. You could spend life listening to a color like that without hearing it talk. To this end, Sid Raleigh was called. He was a rich merchant, originally from Fez, slight, quick, and quite good-looking. He had a way with words and a mocking eye. The only outward sign of wealth was his ring, its two large stones cut into the light, looking you straight in the eye. He had no equal in all the land when it came to dressing the city's notables, and thus, one assumed, Moulet's room as well. That same day, Sid Raleigh had a dozen rolls of cloth delivered. He rolled them out one by one until they came to rest under Moulet's gaze. Magnificent fabrics, each outdazzling the next, woven from green of the olive, the brown of the earth, the red of the poppy, the gold of the harvest, the blue of the ocean, and still others sewn exclusively with silver thread, holding in their folds all sorts of flowers that no spring could ever again hope to rival. Moulet raised his eyes. They rested on the ring, then on Sid Raleigh. He said, "If it's absolutely necessary to have color there, see to one that will keep its mouth shut forever." 13. Seated before the writing stand, Tacfine waited, reed pen in hand, legs crossed. He was waiting for that precise moment when you say to yourself, night is coming on. Because if there is one moment where the light trembles and time hesitates, if there's an exact moment when the clock panics, not knowing which way to turn, it's that one. No longer day, and not yet night, seated there before his writing stand. It was surprising how far day still had to go before inevitability. Poor swimmer caught in the current, knowing his strength will go without his being able to articulate a word, a cry, let alone a howl, or even to raise his hand to the sky to let his fingers live on a little longer. That's how it always is. First day, then night. Who would say what it would take to measure so small a thing, smaller, more insignificant still than the word placed between day and night? It's as if, but only as if during all that time under cover from the sun, night was clinging somewhere the best it could, clinging for dear life, nailed to the stars, or simply held back by the tip of a crescent moon, desperately trying to make itself forget. When suddenly, strength spent, unable to hold out any longer, night was falling. And it's at that moment that Tacfine starts to write. During the day, he waited for that moment when the light, weary of so much light, what he loved most of all there at his stand was that flicker of light still stamped lightly on a day no longer there. That was the moment he chose to write. That and only that. And no other thread of ink would do. There is that man handing him a reed pen, asking him to bend over the blank page, imploring him to invent him an end. Inert, motionless, down to that final letter laying mute on its back. That point that transfixes and kills. No pain, no illness, no epidemic had got the better of him. Perhaps then, writing and its sweet madness. Who knows? He has to roll out that living page, slip thousands of signs across it, which would become along the thread of time, letters, then words, then complete sentences, redrafting the arc of a shoulder going along the curve of a dislocated, broken, jagged rib to at last reunite the pen with the red opening of an open wound on the spongy border of flesh where the skin frays, separates, and opens into the formidable machinery of God, mesh of organs assembled with a mechanical precision that only a hand can write, that writes can jam. He has to recount his ancient life to the last drop, there where the reed runs dry, with the noise of tearing skin. The pen should have been trimmed from a brown reed, beveled and turned in the direction of words, the nib pushing the flesh into its own, before there appears at the periphery of a dot, at first instant, faint, almost drained, then sharper, more precise, the cleft of an astonishing wound, prospect of total death, no way back. Tacfine had imagined him lying still on the ground in the shade of a mad tree, olive branch over his open wound. The branch had a regular pattern of a still fresh scar, white lips, twisted mouth, hanging tongue, the unbearable look of one who's just been betrayed. Moulet raises his head slightly, lowers it again, nods, turns to look at this woman looking him in the eye, the reed pen red between his fingers, liquid. This begins gradually with a woman descending stair steps, one by one, repeating that same murderous phrase, hatred between her teeth. She has the agility of a beast and an ugly look in her eyes that one's never seen there before, an animal. She advances on the man and strikes to the blood. It was very short, effortless, of a disconcerting nature, a touch theatrical with that mask on her face with no longer a face. The reed pen driven to the heart, and a hand holding up his body about to fall. Body of a man big as a tree, suddenly smitten by some great disease. He appeared to be sleeping on his side, legs folded up, fists clenched, the way a child does in a lightning storm. He breathes softly, as if afraid something inside might snap, as if fearing to break the thread connecting him to his master. Only that trembling lip suggests he can still speak. "Kiss me," he says. Tacfine lightly raised his head, carefully, lightly. He lifted pen from paper, set it on the writing stand, spread his fingers, and flew his hand over his head. Then softly he brought it to rest on the nape of his neck. So, I'm going to stop there with Nomad Love, and we shall continue again on another Thursday read. So, I will be right back after this break. Hope to see you there. and welcome back. So, I'm going to be continuing with the Lowell offering. And we have gotten up to the fourth letter from letters from Susan. Dear Mary, you say that you wish to come to Lowell, and that some others of my old acquaintance wish to come, if I think it advisable, and as I have but a few moments to write, I will devote all my letter to this subject. There are girls here for every reason, and for no reason at all. I will speak to you of my acquaintances in the family here. One, who sits at my right hand at table, is in the factory because she hates her mother-in-law. She has a kind father and an otherwise excellent home, but, as she and her mamma agree, about as well as cat and mouse, she has come to the factory. The one next to her has a wealthy father, but like many of our country farmers, he is very penurious, and he wishes his daughters to maintain themselves. The next is here because there is no better place for her, unless it is a Shaker settlement. The next has a well-off mother, but she is a very pious woman, and will not buy her daughter so many pretty gowns and collars and ribbons and other etceteras of Vanity Fair as she likes. So she concluded to help herself. The next is here because her parents and family are wicked infidels, and she cannot be allowed to enjoy the privileges of religion at home. The next is here because she must labor somewhere, and she has been ill-treated in so many families that she has a horror of domestic service. The next has left a good home because of her lover, who has gone on a whaling voyage, wishes to be married when he returns, and she would like more money than her father will give her. The next is here because her home is in a lonesome country village, and she cannot bear to remain where it is so dull. The next is here because her parents are poor, and she wishes to acquire the means to educate herself. The next is here because her beau came, and she did not like to trust him alone among so many pretty girls. And so I might go on and give you the variety of reasons, but this is enough for the present. I cannot advise you to come. You must act according to your own judgment. Your only reasons are a desire to see a new place, a city, and to be with me. You have now an excellent home, but, dear Mary, it may not seem the same to you after you have been here a year or two, for it is not advisable to come and learn a new occupation unless you can stay as long as that. The reasons are that you may become unaccustomed to your present routine of home duties and lose your relish for them, and also for the very quiet pleasures of our little village. Many who are dissatisfied here have also acquired a dissatisfaction for their homes, so that they cannot be contented anywhere, and wish they had never seen Lowell. But tell Hester that I advise her to come. She has always lived among relatives who have treated her as a slave, and yet they would not allow her to go away and be a slave in any other family. I think I can make her happier here, and I see no better way for her to do than to break all those ties at once by leaving her cheerless drudgery and entering the mill. I don't know what to say to Miriam. So many pleasant and unpleasant things are mingled in her lot now. There she lives with Widow Farrer, and everything about them looks so nice and comfortable that people think she must be happy. The work is light, but everything must be just as the old lady says, and she has strange vagaries at times. Miriam has to devote a great deal of time to her whims and fancies, which is not spent in labor. Yet she would find it unpleasant to leave her nice large chamber, with its bureau and strip carpet and large closets, for the narrow accommodations of a factory boarding house, and the fine great garden in which she now takes so much pleasure, would be parted from with much sadness. But then her wages are so low that she says she can lay aside nothing and still dress herself suitably, for she is always expected to receive and help entertain the old lady's company. When the widow dies, Miriam will have nothing unless she leaves her a legacy, which, on account of the many needy relatives, is not to be expected. So you had better tell her to make all arrangements for coming here, and then, if the old lady will retain her by raising her salary, tell her to stay with her. As for Lydia, I think she had better not come. I know how disagreeable her home is in many respects, but it is her home after all. She has to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and to be on her feet, as she says, till 9 o'clock at night, unless she sits down for an hour to patch the boys' clothes or to keep her father's accounts. She has to be everybody's waiter, and says that all seem to think that she were born for that occupation. Then she has no accommodations but a little crowded attic, which she shares with old Jenny and 3 or 4 little ones. And she has told me that she never knew what it was to have $1 of her own to spend as she might like. Yet there she is an important personage in the family, while here it would be quite different. She enjoys excellent health, and her varied employment appears to suit her. It might be very different here in that respect also. She has nothing of her own now, but she is sure of care and comforts in case of sickness, and necessaries always. When her father dies, or when she marries, she will probably have something of her own, but, you will reply, her father may live as long as she will, and she may never marry. True, but tell her to consider all things, and before she decides to leave home, to request her father to pay her a stated sum as wages. If he will give her $1 a week, I should advise her to stay with him and her mother. Here she would have as many of the comforts and accommodations of life as there, but perhaps no more. She could dress better here, but not better compared with others. That is something to consider. Nancy wishes also to come, because her trade does not suit her. If she is losing her health as a sedentary employment, I certainly advise her to change it. I think she could do well here, and then she has a voice like a nightingale. It would gain for her notice, and perhaps emolument. But I have hardly room to say goodbye. Yours as ever, Susan. Harriet Farley, Volume 4, 1844, page 257 through 259. And that was the last letter from Susan. And I shall see you in episode 50. Have a good night. Sleep well.